What's up, everybody? I'm Jordan from Poison Noises. This is my buddy Jay.
What's up, guys?
I don't know, maybe some of you remember him from some of the way back videos from, God, was it 3.5, 4 years ago now?
Yep.
Long friggin' time ago.
Still never got endorsed by Fender.
It never happened. All this time later, we're still hoping. That's why they're all behind us. We're holding one right here. We'll see if we can make it happen with today's video. So today, I called Jay in for this because I can't think of a person better for the job. I wanted to kind of show you guys the magic that is the Fuzz Face and Uni-vibe sound together. And when I first thought about that, you know, after talking with a couple of other pedal makers in the industry and stuff like that, there's always like a couple of artists that really come to mind. And you know, Hendrix at Woodstock, right?
Iconic.
That's a big one. That's probably the biggest one, right? Gilmour.
Absolutely.
Gilmour definitely. You know,
Yep.
who do you think about when you think about Uni-vibe?
I mean, those two guys are big
Those
guys.
are the biggest
Robin
ones,
Trower,
right?
you know,
Yeah, totally.
that's
Yeah,
another
yeah.
guy, but
absolutely.
But they definitely are two guys that brought it onto the main stage, I would say.
Where do they rank in like your favorite guitar players of all time?
Top.
The top are they the top two?
Well,
top three. Robin Trower
I mean,
also?
it's, you know, I wouldn't say Robin Trower's top three, but I would definitely say
Gilmour and
Gilmour's got to be up there. Hendrix has got to be up there.
Okay.
You know,
Fair
it's tough to say.
So this is why I called Jay. This was the reason, because I knew he's the right guy for this. So every time Jay actually, honestly, for the sake of it, is the namesake of the Lighthouse. Also, I mean that was your idea. That was your pitch. He's got a couple of versions of the Glut cheeks that are one-off limited edition versions of them, you know. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to find a couple of good settings between these two pedals to be able to explain why these two things are so great together. And people have been doing this since, what, 1967, 68? I think 68 is probably closer, right? So,
yeah, probably the first.
Woodstock 69, right?
First
so it's
combo of Uni-vibe
yeah.
Fuzz Face-ish fuzz, or just fuzz in general.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So now the Glut cheeks also does kind of like a tone bendery thing also, which can be just as good running into it. But that setting kind of together, that's where it lives. That's what we want to really talk about today. Is kind of the Fuzz Face Uni-vibe. So that's
where I love it. I mean, and you can do it, and there's so many different sounds you can get out of them. That's why I really was excited about doing this.
Yeah.
For a while I've been begging them.
We've been talking about this for a little bit.
Just because I think that the Glut cheeks is one of the pedals that Jordan makes that is a little bit almost kind of flies under the radar from a lot of people.
Is it your favorite of the fuzzes?
It's absolutely probably my favorite pedal you make.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's one of those things where I think that...
I think Josh said the same thing, too.
It just doesn't get the credit it deserves, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
I'm
that's
a big
why
fan of it.
I really wanted to be a part of helping, do whatever I can to showcase how awesome it is.
So on a nerd level, just to kind of get some of this stuff out of the way, because this is the fun stuff for me to talk about before we let Jay rip into this kind of stuff. Let's start with the Lighthouse, because that was my first pedal in kind of this new, I don't want to call it a new line, it's not really, but this new, imaginative representation or whatever of Poison Noises, where obviously the parameter names are verbatim. There's a couple of aesthetic changes. Obviously, like the logo is a little, it actually has like the white background stuff. Like it's just kind of like a new era. Let's call it the new era. So the Lighthouse was the first new pedal from that, and I really wanted to make a Uni-vibe. And it's funny because Uni-vibe is like one of those things. I think Uni-vibe flies under the radar.
You're right.
I think like in modulation, people are like phaser, chorus, flanger, and they don't talk about it.
I think a lot of people sometimes assume that what they're hearing is a phaser when they feel modulation, just because phaser is one of the most known ones. Same with chorus.
Yeah.
And I think Uni-vibe is one of those things that probably gets used more than us as guitar players realize.
And I hear people say that like they think it kind of like lives in the middle of those two things. It
is. It sort of has kind of the three-dimensionalness of a chorus, but at the same time, it has this washiness.
I mean, it's literally phasing. I mean, that's like how it works. So in this pedal, I mean, traditionally, usually what you have is a bunch of transistors that are kind of like being shifted in and out of phase, being controlled by a lamp on the inside. There's a literal light that pulses and changes with the LFO to control the modulation, and that is essentially like the brain of the operation. That is what makes, whatever happens to that light is what happens to the sound, is the best way to think about it. So I wanted to do a version of it with all op amps and kind of like a more modern take on it. And I'm not the first person to do that. There's been plenty of other guys in the industry that do that also, but that's what I wanted to do. And I found a way to kind of get that same pulsy feeling with an LED as opposed to the actual incandescent lamp, which is a little more the longevity of it's better. You know, it's a little more reliable, less expensive for sure to replace and fix. You know what I mean? But
we just went through having to fix another one.
Yeah. By a brand we won't mention, I guess. But but the general idea was that, and I wanted to have a more controllable LFO. So there's like, you know, the ability to control either sides of the waveform, to kind of control how round they are. Because that's like another thing I noticed about Uni-vibe, especially with talking to Utilines. Like, everyone thinks a Uni-vibe sounds different. Like, if you ask them, like, what does a Uni-vibe sound like? I feel like nobody agrees what it actually sounds like. You know,
it's true. It's hard to describe. That's for sure.
And it's kind of like, you know, this is like the build your own burger version of a Uni-vibe.
Absolutely, one of the most adjustable that I've ever seen.
Well, I appreciate that. There's some stuff.
That's how you are always as a pedal.
You know, I like to add a lot of different possibilities. I like when I give a pedal to the same pedal to two different people and they use it in completely different ways. That's exciting for me, right? So that's this guy, and you know, you'll be able to see the pulsing of whatever happens in the LED, so you can kind of get the idea, and that is in direct correlation with the light that is controlling the actual phasing of the Uni-vibe itself. So. Or the modulation, rather. We don't want to call it phasing. But so then we have the Glut cheeks, and this is the new and improved version of the Glut cheeks. And there's not a ton of new bells and whistles. The controls are all the same. The layout is pretty much the same.
It says what they do.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It says what the parameters actually are. The only thing, you know, I always like to be as transparent about it as possible. I'm a little pickier with the transistors. Every time I put out a new version of the Glut cheeks, I get pickier and pickier with the transistors. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the old ones, because there's not. They work. It's just like, in my head, I'm like, this is the number I'm trying to hit. You know what I mean? So
why not be trying to improve constantly?
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. You know, some would beg to differ, but I think, but yeah, so this is a fuzz face and a tone bender in one box. You can pull the first transistor out of the circuit, change it from a 3 to a 2 by flipping the switch. Down is the tone bender position, up is the fuzz face position. And plus bias controls, a pretty neat tone control that scoops all the low end out of it, can get all the throatiness out of it.
You know, with traditional overdrive pedals, a lot of times people would think, oh, you want a tone control that could take away highs because sometimes they get bright.
Right.
With a lot of fuzzes, especially old school fuzz face style and tone bender, you know, more fuzz face than tone bender. I mean, tone bender is pretty well rounded, but the fuzz face especially can get really, really kind of muddy and not clear at all. So rolling some of the bottom end out if you need to is really convenient.
It also has this control over here on this side, this strength control, which kind of tries to do something similar to when you roll the volume back on the on the guitar itself. As
it's helpful. The pedal. It's definitely helpful if you use different guitars with different pickups, because, for example, like, you know, the Hendrix thing, or one of the things that people often do with fuzz faces is, like you said, you can clean them up by rolling the volume back a little bit. But if you had really hot pickups, that might not be as easy to do. For example, this has humbuckers, so in this case, it may not clean up quite as well as a regular Strat with a lower output single coil.
Sure.
So to have that control to roll that back, it sort of kind of makes my humbucker hit the pedal like a lower output single coil pickup would.
And being able to have that just like happen when you step on the button versus like rolling something
having
back.
To do anything, right? Yeah, it's you're setting it for your guitar in a way. So if you want it to work the way it would work for a single coil pickup, but you don't have a single coil pickup, you have the ability to do that.
Right.
Which is nice to have.
So that's these two pedals in a nutshell. You know, from 1,000 yards away, op amp Uni-vibe with a bunch of controllable LFO stuff, tone bender and a fuzz face in one circuit full of juicy, delicious BC 108s.
Which is just stupid.
Yeah,
Which is just stupid.
You need both. You definitely need both. I pretty much always run on the tone bender
sick.
setting. Personally, I like tone benders better. I think we've talked about that before. But for this purpose,
I mean, just the fact that you could have... to me, why that pedal just flies so under the radar, I just feel like everyone needs to have one because of the fact that it is an incredible fuzz face and an incredible tone bender in one pedal. I mean, that like that's just sick. You just don't see something like that. You know, I've never seen any other fuzzes that have that sort of variability.
Right.
You know what
and I mean? So another thing we should probably talk about before, we've been doing a lot of talking. We should probably do some playing, rip into this a little bit.
No, it's all right. You guys love sitting here listening to ramble, right?
Right. So one thing you always talk about with fuzz faces is people always say fuzz first. You know what I mean? First in the chain.
Sure.
That's usually a golden rule, and it's subjective. It's music. It's creative. It's whatever we want it to be. Right?
Hate me, internet.
Yeah, right. So this I saw a great meme the other day that was like, here's a picture of Hendrix playing without any true bypass pedals, and everybody's still having a good time. It was a picture of him at Woodstock, and it was, it's this. What does he have? He has a Fuzz Face.
Wow.
He has it's a Vox wah, right?
Yep.
It's a Vox wah, a Fuzz Face, and a Uni-vibe. That's like the whole sound, right?
That's it.
So, anyways,
And a stack of Marshalls.
right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like a freaking a huge wall of them, but not a wall quite. But so I say, let's rip into each of these individually.
Right
first.
now, are they both on still or no?
I believe I haven't touched anything. So they should both
so
be on.
I believe
so right
they're
now. Let's talk about the clean tone. Here's my clean tone.
Well, so volume up, humbuckers, neck, bridge.
Clean tone. We're into a pretty cranked AC30 right now.
It's
so.
opened up,
Yeah, it's in the other room
It's
because it's that loud. So, so like I said, we usually do fuzz first. In this instance, we are not. We are doing the Uni-vibe to kind of push the fuzz face. That's the idea. That's the sound. That's the thing we're trying to explain right.
You can do it either way, and there's no right or wrong. The big difference is if you run the Uni-vibe into the fuzz, we're going to get a little less character from the Uni-vibe and more character from the fuzz and how it's being opened by the Uni-vibe. Because Uni-vibes kind of have this push-pull thing they do. So that's how I prefer it. There's nothing wrong with running it the other way around. If you put the fuzz first, it's just going to give you more Uni-vibe sound. So this is the way that I prefer it, like I said.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we start with one, and then we'll play the other, and then we'll put them on together, and we'll see and try to explain what's going on. Let's start with the vibe. Give that a click on real quick. So we'll go ahead and strum a chord real quick. Put on the Uni-vibe. There's that washy warbliness, right? I'm gonna get a little dramatic with it so we can actually hear what it's really doing. Push this throb control. Slow it down. This thing will go really slow too.
That's where you get sort of that phaser kind of territory.
Yeah. What's the Floyd song on Dark Side with the big rig? Is it Breathe?
Breathe, the
Breathe
first
is
one.
the one,
you
right?
get that
Yeah.
E minor.
That's with quite a bit of that throbbing kind of,
Absolutely.
that drive control.
I was gonna say, have we got into the special knob in the center there?
That's what I'm using right now. Yeah, we're pushing it. We're pushing it a little bit. I mean, just so you guys can hear what that's doing. A Uni-vibe, like he talked about, it's kind of got this push-pull thing to give it more of that sound that comes from it. We put that on a knob here that kind of drives the gain stage a little harder. You'll hear it.
Especially if you speed it up a little bit, I think it'll be really.
That's the feeling. And then, I mean, that's a lot. That's probably too much of it, you know what I mean? But you
got control to make it however you want. However you can use it artistically, that's on you,
I also have the depth pushed pretty hard right now too, just to be able to let it go. I mean, this thing goes full blown wacky.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
and that's the fun part about it.
So that's that Uni-vibe sound. Let's kind of get it. I'm gonna put a little more of that drive sound in it than you had before when we first started the video, just so I think that's working for us. But I am gonna put the depth back kind of closer to where you had it.
Yeah.
Where do you want the speed? You tell me where you want the speed. Faster or slower?
A little faster. Right there.
Right there. Cool.
That sounds great.
All right, let's talk about fuzz.
Fuzz.
Let's just turn it on. Go give me the clean.
Yep. All right. So we're gonna start full bore.
Here we go. Control stuff.
Just to show how Fuzz Faces are almost one of those pedals you could just leave on and use your volume control on your guitar.
They call that what, the touch sensitivity, right? That's the idea.
Yep, exactly, and they're just dynamic.
So for a further explanation of it, roll your volume back on the guitar instead of rolling the gain control on the fuzz. You kind of get a similar effect. It cleans up, is what a lot of people say it does. Like I think it becomes a little sparklier. You know what I mean? You lose a little bit of that low end that we were kind of talking about. That sometimes gets a little muddy, and obviously it's not as driven, as it was before.
Yeah, we could even roll a tiny bit of that low end out of there. Right about that. That sounds like it's not even on.
Right.
You
could just have that on all the time on the board and then use your other pedals, right?
Yeah. Or you don't even, that's the thing is you don't even need
the other pedals because
you go to the bridge where it's volumes all the way up and you get It's just sick. It's just sick.
Some of my favorite things about this pedal are like some things that go. I mean, like, let's do some of the weird, wacky stuff just for the sake of. Most of the settings on this pedal, in my opinion, sound the best all the way up.
Yeah,
pretty much all of them. that kind of harkens back to the old days of Poison Noises, where it was like, just turn everything all the way up. That's the best place. You know what I mean? But
it's almost always the case.
So right now I have gain, tone, and the strength control all the way up, and volume. Obviously, you got to kind of play with that however you want to drive the amp. One thing I will say. And this is something that I think a lot of people don't actually notice about this pedal when they're using it. So the bias control, like here, right now we're fully cranked. Go ahead and play the bias. Yep. Play with just, Start to get that splatty, farty, kind of Velcro-y sound, right? So, obviously, the farther you turn it, the more it becomes like your traditional fuzz, And I actually am going to put this in, I'm going to put this in tone bender mode. It chokes out. So, I feel like everyone's first reaction when they plug this pedal in is to just crank the bias control all the way to the right. Or to the
I'm not gonna lie, I like it most of the way at least.
No, so here's the thing, right? If you want to bias this to be like actually what like a tone bender or fuzz face is supposed to be, it's actually closer to like here. It's like closer to like 3 o'clock. But where I have the range set, I personally think that fuzz faces and tone benders sound a little better when they're a little over biased.
Sure.
Which is why the full range control on this will go all the way.
Yeah, it definitely has more punch.
Yeah. And it's right before it starts to get splatty. You know what I mean? Like, and there's a difference between Velcro-y and splatty. Velcro
Absolutely.
is I'm so anemic, I'm not getting enough, I can't give you, and then Splatty's like, I have too much and I can't get it all out. Right. Like, so really, I think it does best probably somewhere around here, which where you had it actually said. Jay said all the pedals in the beginning, so I'm kind of just trying to make my way back there, but I think you have the gain rolled a little back too.
Chef's kiss,
and
baby.
Then back to the fuzz face control.
Yeah.
So, all right, now let's run through it. Give me just your clean tone. And then here's some Uni-vibe. Give me some fuzz. Together.
Oh, that's just magic.
That's the sound.
That's
what we're talking about today. That is the magic. That is these two pedals together.
It sounds like dredging through psychedelic muck with your guitar. You know, it's
and there's more than one ways to approach this too. You know what I mean? Like the settings we have here are not the only way to do it.
Not at all. Literally, I told Jordan there's a bunch of incredible other demos of this pedal on his channel, and I just said, nobody's doing the thing.
Right.
You know, so that's why I was begging him. I was like, let me come do the thing.
So let me ask you this. I was trying to figure out the right way to approach this because we didn't really sit down and be like, we should show this, we should show this, we should show this.
This is completely just off the cuff. Yeah. So we're just having fun.
We just knew that. We knew we wanted to show Tuesday. This. We knew we would be able to figure out this together. You know what I mean? If we did do it. So let me ask you this: if you were gonna do, let's break it down real easy for you. If you were gonna do Hendrix at Woodstock this way, how would you set these pedals? I know that's kind of a loaded question.
Basically how we've got it right now.
That's kind of how I feel too.
The key is, so you got to have the fuzz face pretty much opened up, because the old vintage fuzz faces, you had to have them completely opened up just to get the unity, basically.
Right.
They didn't really have the headroom that this has. So the volume, you don't need to have it necessarily wide open. All about how much you want to hit the front of your amp. If your amp has a lot of headroom, then you might want to push the volume a little harder on the pedal. If your amp is very low headroom, you might not need to. But fuzz, you're going to want almost all the way dimed just to get that kind of vintage Hendrixy kind of thing, if that's what we're going for, because his is almost always going to be wide open. Tone, you could probably have it wide open. It's going to get a little dark and muddy unless you have some single coils, in which case you could either roll the tone back if you have a humbucker, or you could use that what's that? The
strength control.
Strength control, just to sort of kind of make your pickups hit that pedal like a single coil would if you had humbuckers.
So let me ask you this. What do you think? Because I have an answer to this in my head, and I want to know if you agree with me, so I'm going to ask you first. What do you think is the major difference between the way Hendrix did this and the way Gilmour did it?
Well, for starters, I think Gilmour hit the whole approach as far as playing. I think they honestly did almost a very similar thing.
It is, when you think about the sound,
it's
like
almost a very similar thing.
And people who could be watching this and never have thought about those two pedals being a part of their sound might just be hearing it like now for the first time.
Yes.
Be like, wow, I never realized, because they play totally different. And it depends. Their playing style is totally different.
The big thing with Gilmour versus like Hendrix is the Hendrix. This was kind of like one of his main sounds for a long time. Gilmour has a lot of sounds throughout the whole discography of Pink Floyd, and there was only sort of like an era where he used a lot of fuzz and the Uni-vibe thing. He kind of moved on as times changed.
Right, I think he uses more like big muff stuff towards the end.
Yeah,
right?
and then especially into the 80s, he was using a lot of rack stuff. He was using a Boss, like the digital metalizer at one point.
Yep.
You know, he was always one of those dudes that was trying new things.
But Hendrix was too.
Hendrix just didn't live that.
Yeah, exactly, right. When does he die? 71?
I'm pretty sure it was the end of 70.
70?
Yeah,
okay.
It might have been 71. I can't remember. I'm sorry.
Think about, like, what pedals are out at that point? Fuzz Face, Tone
Not
Bender, Fuzz Tone.
Apparently, Josh has a whole episode about how apparently there's stories that Hendrix had a Big Muff at one point, but I don't know. I don't buy it. So as far as anything I've ever heard, I've never heard.
I probably have some insider information on that story, so I won't talk about it too much, but I know Mike Matthews says he did.
Yes.
I know that.
I'm sure.
And some other people say he didn't.
I don't know. I've just never heard it. I mean, if so, all the stuff I've heard Hendrix playing with Fuzz and Uni-vibe and
Big Muff's
his
what,
sound,
69, 70?
Yeah, right? Yeah, it's right there. I mean, it's possible he could have had it, but they sound so different. A Big Muff sounds so different than a Fuzz Face style or Tone Bender style circuit. It's so much more like woolly kind of.
It's more like a drive.
Yeah, it's its own thing.
Yeah,
you know.
So
that's why Fuzz is so cool.
Right, and just for clarity's sake on this. You can do this with other fuzzes, but it's not the same. It's not the same with stuff that's buffered on the front. If you have a fuzz that people are always like, that's got to go first in the chain. Well, you think about the Maestro fuzz tone. You think about Fuzz Face. You think about Tone Benders. You think about stuff like that.
More vintage style fuzzes.
Stuff that needs to go first because it's so reactive to what's in front of it.
Yep. So the signal you're hitting with.
It can load the pickups. You can control it with your volume. There's a lot of different things you can do. Those are the fuzzes that work best with what we're talking about right now. Those topologies of fuzzes are some of the most popular, if not the most popular. You can do it with a fuzz face, but it's not going to do the same thing. It'll sound different. It won't sound not worse by any means. It's all subjective. But for what we're talking about right now, that driving throbbiness you get from the Uni-vibe works best with a fuzz that people say is supposed to be in the front. That's the best way to think about it.
Think about it like this: the Uni-vibe is just taking your guitar. It's almost like it's not even there, and you're sort of running the fuzz at the front. It's just that now into the front you have your guitar that's on a wave rather than this.
Right, and it's more than just the modulation too. It's the literal, the power, the gain, the push and pull. Yeah, right. So and that's
because it's doing that to the fuzz. That's why if you hear are those both on still?
Yeah.
If you do this, Hendrix, Isle of Wight or something, and during Machine Gun, he does this one bend where you hear it. You could feel it in the bend. It's pushing that fuzz, and that's just like one of those most special things ever. I remember being 18 and hearing that for the first time, and being like, "Oh my God, what is that?" Right. That guitar is just what? It's so sick. Yeah.
All right, so to go back to what I was saying before, let me ask you if you agree with this, because I think we kind of wouldn't have circled here. But when I think Hendrix, I think high speed, low depth.
I would say really with the difference, and I love that. That's a great that is sort of what you could think because of that. I think headroom is the difference. I think Hendrix had low headroom amps, and I think
definitely.
Gilmour had high headroom.
No, and that makes a difference. But I'm saying just in terms of the actual how they would set the pedals.
I think they're really similar, man. I mean, I think
slow speed
for some stuff.
Right,
for
exactly.
some stuff.
I think it's the opposite for the two of them when I think about it.
I could see that.
That's how it goes in my head, at least.
Well, you know what it is, but I think depth is probably in the same spot. I think what it is you hearing the Uni-vibe more with the Gilmour stuff in a way because of the fact that his whole rig is set up to be a little bit more headroom and have a little more clarity, whereas Hendrix's thing was like this sort of lively animal. It had so much color that it kind of buried the Uni-vibe.
Right, and with more headroom, the depth can be more present.
Exactly.
There's more of that dynamic. Like we're talking. Right, so when we talk, I mean, headroom is headroom. You know what I mean? But when we're talking about headroom, we're talking about like this is your quietest possible sound. This is your loudest possible sound. This is your dynamic range. Right. Yep. Having a lot of headroom means that you're not getting a bunch of compression, right? Because so compression is literally you take this dynamic range and you squash it, and then sometimes usually you bring it up in volume to match it up with gain, right? So we're talking about like having a lot of headroom and having a lot of available difference in your quietest sound and your loudest sound.
Yep.
And when that happens, you can hear more of the effect. I think that's why I'll be honest, I would, if I had to wager, like I would put money that I bet he ran it at a more depth than Hendrix did. I really do think that.
I think Hendrix,
or at least on the
cranked.
recordings.
Oh, on recordings, I'm sure.
But the thing, so he's talking about how Hendrix has like this animal of
his
sound
amp
coming through.
had way less headroom the way he was running it because it was pretty much wide open. And a lot of times I think Gilmour may have been running the fuzz into the Uni-vibe. That was the other big thing I was going to talk about.
Never thought about that.
Yes, I think that was a big part of it too. Personally, and this is all speculation. I mean, I'm just basing this off of the fact that I've listened to a lot
Gilmour
of records
in this video
of both bands.
and make him tell us we're wrong. That's what I want.
I would love to. I would love to. That would be great if he called me and he said, "Jay, you're awful. You're wrong."
Yeah, best wrong.
You're way off.
That's the best wrong I've ever been in my life.
Accept
David
it.
Gilmour calling me and telling me I'm wrong.
I'll be like, "You're right. You're right. I am wrong."
So you think? I mean, I think you're right. I think Hendrix. It's definitely 100% is.
It's just that
into
there's so much, and there's stories that potentially some nights he ran it otherwise around, and I'm not one to say one way or another. I know the sound that I love of him doing it is definitely vibe into fuzz.
Right. That's what it comes to my mind. Too.
Yes, and that being said, his amplifier, like what Jordan was saying about lower headroom, his amplifier had less headroom, so when you're hitting it with the signal, that amp is compressing a lot and adding a lot of its own character that's going to affect the way that the Uni-vibe and the fuzz sound.
And with more compression, the less change you're going to hear
exactly.
in that Uni-vibe. I think that's the kind of place we're coming around
Exactly.
to.
Whereas with Gilmour, he had more headroom, therefore you're going to hear more of the tonality of the Uni-vibe in general, just because there's more room for it to blossom.
Let's play some more guitar.
Absolutely.
Let's do some stuff. What do you think? What do you if you were going to change something on this right now? What would you want to do?
Well, I mean, you could try. Well, for one, obviously, like showing the differences with this right here, just like going down to the tone bender, wide open. I mean, this thing is just a monster, like a riff rock machine. We could turn off the Uni-vibe, right, just to get this idea of
what the
one other way you could use the Glut cheeks versus how I usually would use it. That right there is a sick way to do it. Then you could get kind of the Jack White thing, get that little bit more sputtery thing going on here, the Fuzz Face side.
You think the sputtery works better on the Fuzz Face side?
Yeah, well, just because it's less, it's more, it's not as much about the fuzz as it is sort of like this sort of like funky, I don't know, there's like a funkiness to it in a way.
I get you.
Yeah, get that thin.
Yeah, right. Yeah, make it like sound like a dead battery, right? It's like crazy how different of a fuzz that is. There's so many different fuzz sounds in this
so
thing.
much. That's exactly why I think that's an unsung hero as far as the pedal goes.
So just like this one has a bunch of wacky and weird stuff, there's 2 knobs we haven't really talked about on this guy. So go ahead and play that. This is our regular. This is what we've been playing with for the Uni-vibe sound, right? And we'll do it real dramatic
like. I'll just play. You can talk. I'll just play this song.
Sure. So these 2 knobs right here. I want you to imagine this controls the waveform, right? So probably better for me to explain it here. We have a sine wave. If we cut the attack really short on that sine wave and we just make it a straight line going up, and then we let the release roll back down regular, you get kind of a weird choppiness to it. Super well on the light, but you'll notice it pops up super sharp and then slowly fades back down. And we'll go slower so you can see it. And then conversely, we do it the other side. Swells up and then drops. It's weird. You almost get kind of like a reverse effect from it, you know?
I was thinking that exact thing.
And then you could even do both of them together. And now we just got this weird, wacky square wave thing. And then back to normal.
So good.
What do you say? We flip the pedals,
I'm down with that.
right? And just
I'm so down with that. I think
do
that's a good way to do it.
Let's try to
Educational.
explain what the difference is, right? So
For educational purposes.
let's do this. Let's get these to a setting we like. Again, like
Yep.
I mean, honestly, we're pretty close right now.
I think we're real close.
We'll get these to a setting we're like, we'll play a little bit, then we'll swap them, and we'll flip them, but we won't change any of the settings.
That's perfect.
And we'll see how it sounds.
That sounds
okay,
great.
cool. So let's see here. How about
Right now, I honestly like the vibe where it's at. Just for
how do you like this for the fuzz face?
perfect.
Okay.
That's perfect.
So do this. Play. Here, we'll turn them both on. Play a riff that you're gonna play again when we flip them over, and then we'll flip them over.
All right.
Damn, I almost got through that whole thing without a hum. Can you believe that?
Dude, it was smooth for a minute. I was wondering. I was like, "What's going on?" I was like, "Do we have like a minion in there?" And put the amp on standby.
Yeah, right. Okay. All right, you ready? All right,
Yeah.
go ahead. Run through it clean. It's brighter. The Uni-vibe is brighter.
Way brighter.
Yeah.
Well, this is where you get that Gilmour thing.
Yeah, right.
So, you know,
that's an interesting thought. And these are the same settings. These are the same settings we just did, just in a different order.
totally different.
You know what's weird is like, I mean, I'm hearing it through a wall right now. That's the other thing. Yeah, it's like I think I'd like that better for like the first time in my life. You know what I mean? I think it's like the first time ever where I've been like,
it's because of the wall. That's why the other one sounded way darker to us. But I can tell you, as a player, instantly I'm noticing I'm getting a little bit less fuzz because I'm not pushing the front end of it with the Lighthouse.
Right.
Remember we were talking about that push and pull? That push feels pretty good.
Right.
It doesn't hurt.
Well, it does. It makes you want to dig into it, right?
It's like nitrous oxide in a drag car. You know?
We could throttle the volume of the fuzz. We could push the Uni-vibe. I don't know if that's
Dude, let's go.
All right, let's do it.
I'm not gonna lie to you, that's the first time I've been doing it wrong.
There's something to be said about that.
What'd they say? Gilmour's on the phone. He's like, you were doing it wrong.
And here's why. Put a thumbnail in this part of the video. This is where Gilmour agreed with us.
That must be why there's so many constipations. I totally murdered that.
I don't even know what that word is, but I agree.
Whatever it is. That must be why Hendrix apparently ran it different ways.
Yeah.
I can imagine him doing that one time and being like, wow.
Oh, there's something to this one time.
Yeah.
And this is our one time right now. We just happen to have it on video.
That's it. Don't worry. When I go home, I'm not changing my pedal board.
Yeah, I'm going to go back home and put the Uni-vibe in front of the Fuzz Face.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? 110%.
That's funny, man.
But dang, that sounds good.
Well, I guess that's kind of right, you can throttle. I mean, it's obvious, right? Like, you throttle one with the other, and why not the other way around? You know what I mean? I guess that kind of makes sense.
The whole point, though, at the end of the day, you should go try both of these.
Go try stuff.
Because they're sick.
Go take two of these.
Just go try them.
Yeah.
Just go try them. If you don't like the Glut cheeks,
you're wrong.
I just don't get it. I don't get it.
Josh Scott says it's his favorite of my pedals. That's what he said.
It's my favorite. It's my favorite.
One of the reasons I redid this one so
with
quick.
The Lighthouse close behind. I mean, the fact I've been bugging him because I love this sound. I've been bugging him for this since he built the first gluttonous fuzz. I was just like, now you need Uni-vibe.
Yeah, that's true. That's crazy to think about. This is 3.5 years in the making. This pedal.
Little did I know, in between then and now, he would make an even better fuzz, in my opinion, than a gluttonous fuzz. That's the crazy part.
It's funny, the gluttonous fuzz. I mean,
it's a different fuzz.
It's more fuzz face like than it is tone bender.
I was gonna say the way that I use the Glut cheeks, you can do it with the gluttonous fuzz, and I've done it.
Oh,
the Glut, it's a different thing. It's cool.
Okay.
It's also worth trying. But the Glut cheeks is it's just great, man.
Why don't we try to make the weirdest noise possible with these two pedals, and then we'll wrap it up.
All right, that's perfect. Crank the vibe speed for sure. That's a must-have. Yeah.
And we'll make one side of it
hard. Yeah.
Let's do the other one though.
Don't resolve it.
And that's it. Leave it there.
That's it.
Well, cool, man. I think we did a pretty good job of at least explaining what we were trying to explain with these two pedals.
Absolutely. And it was fun.
Yeah, it was good. And we learned, and today both you and I had a moment where we looked at the other.
Dude.
Right.
I'm dumbfounded. I'm like, I'm going to be thinking about that tonight.
Right. Let that just resonate for a while. Well, thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for coming and sitting through us rambling and playing about 30 seconds of guitar.
Yeah, sorry.
But we set up this whole guitar. And we're like, yeah, we got to get the amp in this room.
Oh,
and
we're going to get it dialed in.
We like moved the mic like 6 different times. And then we were like, and, we just rambled the
They're
whole
like,
time,
let's not play, though.
and then let's just not use it. But both of these things are available. You can find them at, our select retailers. Most of them are listed on our website. If you're local to, Capital District, our area, you've probably seen them in all the stores around here. If not, they are also available on poisonnoises.com. We have demos for both of these also. They are readily available. And
they're a lot better than what I just did. But if you wanted to know if they would do that, now you know.
They do the thing.
That was the important thing. That was it. I was just like,
Jordan. The whole
Jordan,
point of this video, did they do the thing?
I love the demos, but where's the thing?
All right, everyone. Thank you so very much. We'll see you next time.
Take care.